Welcome. I'm Carlotta Stankiewicz, Director of Marketing and Communications at the Blanton Museum of Art, and welcome to our curated conversations. Today, our topic is Flower Power, Art and Baking at the Blanton. And today we're going to have some special guests in addition to two of our Blanton curators who will now introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ginevra. I'm the curatorial assistant for prints and drawings and an aspiring Ina Garten.
Hi everyone, I am Chrissy Zappella. I am the Blanton Curatorial Fellow of European Art, Painting and Sculpture at the Blanton Museum of Art.
Everybody in the audience, your audio is muted, so nobody can hear you, and only the panelists are visible on the screen. And we will be taking questions throughout for our panelists to answer. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you can see the little icon that says Q&A. And if you submit your questions there, then we will try to answer them as quickly as possible. Also, we hope that you, if you've been to any of these curated conversations before, maybe you noticed that we share a recipe for a cocktail and a mocktail beforehand. And I think tonight it was a cake batter martini and mocktini. So I don't know if anybody's got their drinks in hand, but I hope you enjoy. And then I wanted to see also down at the bottom there, you can do a show of hands, I think. And so I just kind of wanted to see how many people had been actually baking at home during this whole quarantine. So I don't know if there's a way to raise your hand down at the bottom. Maybe it's not down here. It used to be.
If you're on a Mac, you can hit Option Y. If you're on a PC, you can hit Alt Y. If you're on your phone or your iPad, you're on your own.
All right. Well, thanks for that. So I'm sure that a bunch of you out there have been baking, and that was kind of the inspiration for this panel today. It seems like everybody has discovered or rediscovered the joy of baking. And so today we're going to see some art from the Blanton's collection that involves baking and or bakers, as well as meeting some of the bakers who entered the Blanton Bake-Off, creating tasty cakes and cookies and even more confections based on art that's actually in our collection. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Ginevra.
So we're going to start by looking at some centuries-old representations of baking. And while these images are as many as 500 years old, their portrayal of who is at the stove and maybe who is stealing a nibble is still very familiar. So specifically, I'm going to show you some scenes of baking as represented in 17th century European prints. I should say I'm a little biased. I do work in the print department, but I think that prints are an interesting medium for this discussion for two main reasons. So first, from about 1500 to 1700, prints were a relatively safe medium to experiment in artistically, as they were neither as costly nor as monumental as paintings or sculpture. And second, printmaking is a reproductive technique. So if you'll humor me for a second, imagine a cupcake batter. One mixture produces multiple servings. Each cupcake is its own thing, but all come from the same batter. The same is essentially true with prints. You start with one surface on which your image is designed, and then ink that surface multiple times to create individual prints. So prints are amazing because you get multiple originals. All right, with that light background, let's start looking at the art. This first print is by Abraham Bosse. He's a 17th century, oops, sorry, go back, Stacy. Yes, he's a 17th century French printmaker, and this is a scene of a bakery. It's from a series of prints Bosse made illustrating various trade professions, and it is a very professional scene. Look at the bakers on the left dedicated to rolling pastry, and there's a separate baker managing the oven. They're fabulous, super precise baking pans and tins hanging from the ceiling. Their geometry is just spectacular, especially set against that meticulous grid of the tablecloth. You might also notice some rabbits and other cuts of meat hanging next to the baking pans. That might seem strange to some of us when you're thinking of a bakery, but if you've ever watched the Great British Bake Off, you'll know that in Europe there is a long culinary tradition of savory pies with meat filling. Anyways, it's clear that we're admiring the work of true artisans here. prints with subjects like this bakery fall into a genre of scenes of everyday life, which were popular in print by the turn of the 17th century. But they weren't the first prints to show scenes of people cooking. Some of the earliest prints, those from the 15th and 16th century, also show cooking. And I'm gonna quickly look at a couple examples of that with one of my favorite tropes, witches cooking. So we're gonna go and dip into the darker side of kitchen craft. All right. This print was made around 1520 and is possibly engraved by an Italian printmaker, Marcantonio Raimondi. Recent scholarship debates the attribution, but regardless, it's an amazing scene of a witch's procession. Witches and their gatherings were really hotly debated at this time. There were fierce arguments about whether witches existed in the physical world or whether witchcraft was more of a mental ailment experienced by women. Philosophers, religious leaders, scholars, and doctors, all of them men, usually offered their opinions, but for those in the real life witch camp, it was common knowledge that witches derived their powers from the devil and often used cauldrons to whip up their earthly demonic activities. So there's a lot going on in this slide, but Stacy, if you'll move to the next image, please. We're looking at one detail here. This is a witch brewing babies. Hopefully that was not immediately evident to those of you looking at this print for the first time, but actually cooking children in a cauldron was understood to be the basis of a witch's recipe for her flying ointment. So she would let the children bubble and boil and then rub the finished ointment on her skin to fly at night. And you can see the ill effects on her skin. It's delineated very aggressively, almost hanging off her rib cage and echoing the skeletal ribs of the monster below her. So you can also notice just how skillfully the engraving reinforces her sorcery. The reedy grass points towards the witch and her hair sort of whips behind her and becomes almost indistinguishable from the smoking, billowing concoction. Her hair and her evil cookery intertwine and almost become the same thing. All right, so let's look at the next image, please. Okay, great. So the potency and popularity of these witchcraft prints were long lasting. This print of a witch at work is made 100 years after the first one we looked at, and it's by the Dutch artist Jan van de Velde II. Again, we see a witch consorting with other worldly creatures, but where our first witch was cooking a flying ointment, I think this image is more likely a weather witch. Another commonly held belief was that witches brewed hailstorms in their cauldrons. And then the lighting and directionality of these lines, I think, speak to this witch's ominous plans. I mean, imagine cooking outside. If you or I tried to pour something into a pot over a campfire, it would blow away with the wind. But if you look at the ingredients this witch is pouring into her pot, they're pouring directly down, even as her hair is whipping horizontally out in front of her. And the flames are moving in that direction too, as are almost all of the diagonal lines articulating this print. So I think we're to understand that the witch is controlling the weather with her cooking. She has recipe and spell books down at her side. Those are called grimoire. She also has some flasks containing other ingredients, and her demon friends are also helping with the cooking, just to reinforce how nefarious and inverted her nature is. We even have one of the demons blowing ingredients into the cauldron as well out of pipes, and you will notice that he's blowing out of the pipes from the opposite end you might expect. All right, you might be asking why I'm spending so much time on witches cooking when we're here for a baking conversation. Fair question. I actually think there's an interesting movement from these scenes of witches to 17th century prints depicting scenes of pancakes. All right, next slide. Thank you, Stacy. The same artist from that last print also made this print, and it's titled The Pancake Woman. As you can see, the woman is huddled over the griddle, grasping a knife under dramatic lighting, and it's not really what we would think of when we imagine entering a kitchen full of the aroma of freshly baked goods. In fact, I think this pancake woman looks a little like our last two sorceresses. She has a hooked nose, which at the time was already a signifier of a witch, In fact, she's not the idealized image of a woman at all. Again, because witches inverted the nature of the universe, consorting with the devil rather than with God. They were believed to invert their sexuality too and transform into more androgynous, less feminized figures. I think it's fair to say that something like that sinister inversion is at play here too. As to baking, it's fun to note that this woman is peeling an apple. Dutch recipes for pancakes at this time often included cinnamon spiced apples. And actually, there are numerous really gorgeous paintings of apple peelers in Dutch art. But here, our pancake woman is crouching with her knife, reminding me a bit of the evil stepmother in Snow White with her poisonous apple. Just something to think about, but for now we'll stick with our pancake women and the adorable youngster is sort of in the background gobbling down the products of this woman's labor. Because this print is not the only one of its kind. Pancake women were a popular subject in 17th century Dutch art. Move to the next image, please. Here's one by Rembrandt. Again, the woman is not very idealized by Renaissance standards. Meanwhile, the group around the pancake woman jostle over her goods in a kind of chaotic, disordered melee. This print is all sketchy scribbles, which is very typical of Rembrandt's masterful etching technique. So I think it's notable that the pancake woman is the only figure fully fleshed out, while everything else around her is less detailed. And I say less detailed, but only in the sense that there is less line work. The other characters are still quite developed, and we see each of their individual emotions. For example, in the bottom, look at how hard this little kid is working to keep his pancake away from the dog. I think this is something that some of you might relate to if you're currently quarantining with some furry friends. And let's move to the next slide. Here's another pancake woman. Again, the men and the women look strikingly similar in Jan Boot's print. There's a poem below the image and it describes what's happening. Roughly translated, part of it reads, "Little Greta hadn't even tasted her pancake when Pete's glutton of a son made off with it." And so right in the foreground, you have poor little Greta denied her yummy snack by this hungry little boy. And the print is actually taken from Boot's series of the 5 senses. And it uses the pancake woman's subject as an allegory for taste. The sort of general androgyny that we've been looking at in all of these pancake women prints is even more notable here, because before the mid-17th century, allegory prints of the 5 senses really favored classicized female personifications. So the next slide is a great example of that. This is a roughly contemporary print by German artist Franz Kline. And I share this print as a counterpoint to the women we've encountered so far, but honestly, it's also, I think, just maybe my mascot for quarantine right now, just sitting alone, chomping on whatever I can get my hands on, reveling in that. And I just really appreciate how celebratory this print is, with cascading bounties of fruit and lusciously draped cloth and curvaceous cornucopia. They're sort of decorating and framing the picture. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Going back to our pancake woman, these scenes are not really aesthetically lovely the way that the allegorical woman is, but they're not grotesque either. Really, in their depiction of everyday life, they lean towards the comically insightful. Their sense of caricature heightens our understanding of what's going on. There's a real wittiness in the artistry and observation, which in a weird way, I think makes pancakes the perfect subject. This food is ideal for demonstrating the greed and eagerness with which a child or even a dog might grab at a baked good, because pancakes come hot off the griddle one at a time. So the seriality of pancakes is perfect for these emotions, and expressing that in art shows a real sensitivity to human relationships and desires. As I said in the introduction with the bakery print, genre scenes of everyday life were popular in the 1600s. And in Northern Europe, those scenes often portrayed common folk like the ones we see in these images. There was a growing culture of curiosity, with many humanist scholars and artists believing that we could learn the most about human nature by examining nature's extremes. So witches or witchish figures, or even just devilish tiny impulses, were all fertile ground for artists to explore. Stacy, could you move to the last slide, please? All right, so to return to Bosse then, the French printmaker from the first slide of a bakery, here is his allegorical print of taste. It's quite oppositional to the other Dutch examples we've looked at. We're not looking here at an everyday scene of everyday people. Instead, we're admiring the height of the social elite with expensive produce like an artichoke on the table and fine cutlery and just luxury all around. And yet, even here, we have a hilariously groomed dog right in the middle, lapping up the spoils too. So to wrap up, perhaps no matter whether you're of the witchy persuasion or a professional baker, or like me, just an eager eater, and maybe none of those things are mutually exclusive, we're all just hunkering down together.
Very nice.
Never, we had a question for you in the very first slide. Yvonne Hilton would like to know what those gigantic urns are and what they would have contained, if anything.
Yeah, great question. So in that first slide by Bosse, the French bakery slide, those gigantic urns are probably decorative. Ornamental vases were a really big deal in printmaking at this time too. So part of this is Bosse just playing into what was popular in the print market, but also giant silverwares were related. The craft for engraving silver was similar to the craft for engraving these metal plates to make prints. And so they're also, Bosse's here sort of incorporating some of the monumental, really amazing silver work that would have existed in really elite kitchens at the same time that he's showing the mastery of his really amazing skill. Is that kind of
yeah, that is super fascinating. I wonder, we have one more question for you. Do we know how much people of the 15 and 1600s believed witches existed?
Yeah, it's such a good question. It was pretty split, I would have to say. And I should say that I'm really talking about Western Europe right now. And different parts of Europe sort of went through their witch crazes at different times. But especially for Northern Europe, which the Van de Velde prints of the witch brewing outside in the wild over the flames, that was happening at a time when there were a lot of printed books also coming out talking about whether or not witches were in fact real and how to fight them. So one of the most famous books that was reprinted multiple times because it was a bestseller even in the 1600s is the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. Great, and it has a whole chapter on whether witches, but it's a dialogue among three different people sort of debating whether or not witchcraft is real. So I would say it's about split, you know.
So we have a couple more questions. We've got one about the pans. There were the pans up on the top, and someone was asking why there are triangle pans. Do you have any idea? Is it just another shape in that?
It's such a good question. I have no idea. I would like to. Abraham Bosse was a really adamant printmaker who loved perspective. He was admitted to the French Academy of Painters and Sculptors as a professor of perspective, and then was ultimately kicked out because he was too obsessed with geometry and printmaking. So I like to think that these very geometric shapes and like all of his perpendicular lines and sight lines are sort of just part of his own philosophy, but they might have had something to do with baking, and I just don't know.
And then we have one more final question from Lorraine Lasden. She's asking if upper class women cooked and baked.
Not really. I mean, this was a time when division of labor was very strict and there were different guilds for different professions. And if you were in the upper class, especially as a woman, you were probably being served. There were entire books printed about the ways to train your servants in your household. So you might be directing and managing the kitchen staff and ordering all of the there are entire chapters dedicated just with the prints are amazing. There are prints that have diagrams of how to fold napkins for different occasions and how your various servingware should be displayed for best presentation purposes. But you might participate in just that management, but you really wouldn't be in the kitchen if you were an upper class woman.
Got it. All right, thank you for your wonderful presentation. So now we're gonna move on to the second part of our program, which is talking about the Blanton Bake-Off. And for those of you who didn't get to see it on Instagram and on Facebook, the entries, you can look for the hashtag Blanton Bake-Off and find the entries that way. And it was sparked by one of our followers who's a fan of the Blanton, and during the quarantine, they baked a wonderful cake that was in the shape of Boston by Ellsworth Kelly. And I've got to give a shout out to our social media manager, Lizabelle Stella, who came up with this idea of having a bake-off, and then it turned into this curated conversation, and here we are today. And so before, also World Baking Day was on Sunday, so, so that was a great celebration as well. So we're gonna have a couple special guests that we're gonna welcome right now. And the first person that we're welcoming is a very prolific baker, and she actually created 3 works that were based on art in our collection, and her name is Lisa Turkovich, and she is the proprietress of the Little Owl Baking Company. And so she's gonna come on and share her 3 works with us, and we're gonna show you the art that inspired them and talk a little bit about. There she is. Thanks, Lisa, for coming and joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, so we have 3 of the 3 works that you entered, and the first one we're going to talk about is the background for me here is the Stacked Waters by Teresita Fernandez, and you made a cake based on this. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the beautiful blue confection there that you did to create the to resemble the tiles in the actual work of art?
Sure. So that I used what's called sugar sea glass for that. It's a mixture of sugar and corn syrup, and you boil it to a certain temperature, and then you lay it on a silicone mat and you let it dry. And then I just took a mallet. Actually, I had a chisel. I was trying to get straight lines, but it's pretty difficult with that type of candy. So I just used a hammer and a chisel, and it kind of broke up, and I had dyed 3 different shades of blue. And then I just sort of pulled up the photo and tried to mimic it somewhat and try to capture the nuances. It was a little difficult with what I was working with, but I like the way it turned out. It was really fun to do.
And let's see the picture of the actual that inspired the work. So I love that it's a bridal picture, and you've got something here on the cake that actually is meant to represent the bride and groom. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how you use that in your other cakes that you bake?
Sure. A lot of my cakes use floral flowers, dried flowers. I really liked the way that the gentleman stands out with his black against all that blue and the white and the flow of her dress. And so I was just looking around at my available options, and I noticed I had some dried flowers hanging. I actually have some behind me if you can see that. But I just found a flower that had the dried, that resembled the dress. And so I turned that one upside down, and then I found a sort of like an amaranth or a quinoa grain that was dried, and it had the darker top. So I just thought that worked really well, placing them together.
And what inspired you to use this work of art, Stacked Waters by Teresita Fernandez? Was there something about it that?
I have been in the atrium there, and it's breathtaking. Like I remember the first time I went in, I couldn't talk with the way the light comes in and the way it transports you. Like I don't know if I was in an ocean or in a dream. It was lovely. So I've always loved that. And when I was perusing the Instagram, I was like, oh, I just got that feeling, that inspiration, like I want to try this. So that's what it was.
Yeah, well, you did a lovely job. And that's like one of the things it's a very iconic work of art that people really associate with the Blanton. And it was created in 2009. It was commissioned specifically for this space in the Blanton. And it's made of individual acrylic tiles. And I wasn't able to get the number of how many, but they do cover about 3,100 square feet. And they go from the darker blue up all the way up to the lighter blue and the white. And it is meant to kind of give this this feeling of water, and that like you're in this pool, and as you go up, you're getting to the top of it. And I think your sea glass confection there really represents that very well. So it's very wonderful. So the next two works that you did are text-based works, which is really interesting because the artists that that you used, that you were inspired by, feature text heavily in a lot of their work, and you actually, a lot of your cakes are letter cakes and that sort of thing. Is there a reason why you do that, or is it just?
You know, to make a long story short, I had seen another cake about 3 years ago. I was on Instagram and I was scrolling through, and a cake similar to what I do came up, and I just had that feeling of like, I've got to try this. And so I just didn't know what I was doing and started out, and it just sort of evolved into what it is now, which is essentially letter and number cakes.
Great. And so this first one that we're seeing is Not Never, and it's by Ed Ruscha, and it's in our exhibition that's in our contemporary project right now, which unfortunately is closed, but you can visit it virtually online. If you go to blantonmuseum.org/museum from home, you can take a virtual 360 tour through this exhibition. And it's Ed Ruscha's work, and he, over the course of 40 years, collected drum skins. And then from 2017 to 2019, he created these text-based works that have phrases that he heard that involve like double negatives a lot, that are kind of colloquialisms, and affix the text to the top of the drum head. So the show is called Ed Ruscha Drumskins. And you want to tell us about this one in particular, Lisa?
Sure. So the cake is red velvet cake, and it was actually a new recipe I had been wanting to try just to see what the crumb of the cake was like. And I thought, this is a great opportunity to try that. So I used red velvet cake, and then I didn't want to do frosting since the piece doesn't have, it's strictly just the red lettering that he did. So I chose to do a glaze made with Bailey's and powdered sugar to kind of give it a shiny effect. And then I also used the glaze to sort of age the drum head. That is an actual drum head. From my husband works with percussion, so there was one available, so like that's perfect. So I took my Silhouette Cameo machine, and I downloaded the picture, and I was able to pull his actual letters to create a stencil for that, to try to get them to look exactly like what he had done.
Which is actually a font that he developed, and it's called Boy Scout Utility Modern. So and he has used that throughout all of these drum skins that you can see in the exhibition. So and has somebody eaten that already? Our deputy director for curatorial affairs is commenting that it looks delicious. So I'm wondering.
I have some lucky neighbors.
Oh, okay, that's great. And then the next one, which is also kind of a text-based, letter-based work, is based on Enye by Leandro Katz. And do you want to tell us about this? This is just amazing. It looks delicious. It's beautiful, and tell us about this.
Thank you. So this was I think when I initially was looking through the collection on your website, this just stood out to me also because of the colors, and I have never done anything like this. And, you know, I watched the video of him explaining how he had blown up the letter to a point where it was distorted. And I thought it'd be really challenging to try to use my knife and cut out the little distortions. And it sort of worked, but I loved the base of it. I should have taken more photos without the frosting, but I used local flowers. This is very similar to what I do normally. It's local flowers, there's dried citrus, there's actually some sugar sea glass on that as well, some flowers from my front yard. I think that's about it. And a really small, delicate tip for the frosting to kind of keep that delicate edge to it.
Right. It's just so fabulous. I love how you talked about blowing it up and how the edges are rough, because that's what Leandro did, is he used an IBM typewriter and printed it and then blew it up and enlarged it until it got large enough and had that roughness around the edges. And this was featured in our exhibition that was on display last year in February, Words Matter, Latin American Art and Language at the Blanton. And there was a series of these prints. And he kind of celebrated this letter Enye and its role in the Spanish language and in a lot of indigenous words. And there's actually a wonderful video where we had the chance to interview him, and it's on our YouTube channel. So if you go to the Blanton YouTube channel, you can see him talking about this creation. And I think one of the things he said is he wanted it to, he blew it up so that the letter started to deteriorate, and he was thinking of it as if looking at the letter under a microscope, which I thought was really, really interesting. And now we're kind of looking at this creation, this cake of yours, and it's almost like these things that are appearing on it. So this is wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us and for sharing your works with us. We really appreciate it, and looking forward to following you on Instagram, because you've got some wonderful, wonderful creations there. So thanks very much. So next we are going to have Chrissy is going to announce the 2 winners of our Blanton Bake-Off. First will be the winner in the amateur category, and then we'll have the winner in the professional category. And so she's going to talk to the one and then talk to the other a little bit about their creation and the work that inspired it. So take it away, Chrissy.
I am so excited to be here to do this. I don't know what I did to deserve to do this, but I am so happy about this. So the winner, I feel like we need a drum roll, is for our amateur category, Stephanie Bellum, who's going to join us right now, I think. Daisy, can you bring Stephanie? Stephanie did the amazing cookie that you guys loved. This cookie was winning from day one and stayed winning, and everyone loved it. There she is. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you so excited?
Yes. And very humbled to have won. This is great. Thank you.
Stephanie, how could you not have won? You captured the essence of one of Austin's most iconic monuments, which is called Austin, the Ellsworth Kelly building here at the Blanton, which is only 2 years old. And I love that you did this because you are involved in the architecture design business.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about why you picked the Kelly building to make?
Sure. So I selected the Ellsworth Kelly's Austin because I love its usage of color in the playful window panes. I also love its manipulation of natural light. For me, natural light is very powerful. It affects my physical and my mental well-being, and it has a strong effect on my mood. So when I
think all of us in quarantine understanding.
Yeah, exactly. I think now more than ever we feel that. And when I step inside the Kelly building, I'm instantly transformed. I feel at peace and calm and energy all at the same time. I can really only compare it to perhaps the same or a similar feeling as stepping into an old cathedral.
Can you advance some slides and show everyone at home exactly what Stephanie's talking about? So when you go into the Kelly building, you're basically walking into a very cathedral-like space with these beautiful stained glass windows that Stephanie has recreated in her cookie. And these are the light that Stephanie's talking about. Steph, for our viewers at home who haven't been to it yet, or who have been but not in a long time, or are just missing it, can you describe for us how, when you go in there, it makes you feel? Because it's a very special space.
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's if I'm not mistaken, the height of the building is around something like 26 feet or so. So it's very grand when you enter. And again, for me, the natural light, the manipulation of it is everything. You have these color fractals that move according to the day and of course the season. So another reason why I love this piece is that it's always a new experience. It's really never the same.
Oh, sorry.
I
wanted to jump in because you're right. It is always a new experience because of this light, right? Mm-hmm. So the time of day and the weather affects it. So every time you go back, it's totally different. Definitely. And what really fascinated me the most about your cookie is you went to extraordinary lengths to get that stained glass correct, because this was so important to you, right? So can you please tell everyone at home about the crazy trials that you went through and how you ultimately fixed it?
Sure. I mean, the cookie in itself is is simple and I think can be replicated by most people, but it's all about the timing of that the hard candy that's been melted down to create the glass window panes. And yeah, it was just a series of trial and error. The first time I tried it, it just completely evaporated and there was nothing to show for it. But eventually, once I got the timing right, I mean, there it is in the photo.
And was it Jolly Ranchers?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a mix of Jolly Ranchers and Lifesavers. So I tried to match as closely as I could. Yeah, so that's it.
Stephanie, thank you so much for your time that you took to do this, and like for loving for Ellsworth, loving Ellsworth Kelly's Austin as much as you do. I think for a lot of us stuck at home, we're really wanting to go back to the spaces outside that are meaningful to us and rejoin our community. And of course, the Blanton and the Kelly building, the Austin, are a big iconic part of Austin, and we are all hoping that we can be there really, really soon, and I'm sure we will be very safely.
Quickly, I just want to throw in, I'm also born and raised in San Antonio, so I saw someone was tuning in, so I just want to say hi.
You're UT alumna.
And I am, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank
Congratulations. You. We're so happy for you, and we're so proud.
Thank you.
Congrats. I am so thrilled as the curatorial fellow of European Painting and Sculpture to announce the winner of the professional category, which I am so excited is from my collection. It is the amazing Christine, same name as me, meant to be, best friends from now on, I'm sure. Is she here? She did. Come on, wait, there she is. Wait, where? I don't know. She'll be here soon, I'm sure. And she did the amazing icon by Simone da Bologna that blew my mind, along with every single other person who saw it. So, Christine, where are you? Are you here? I'm gonna let Stacy work on that. But Stacy, can we see the cookie and the painting in the meantime while we're waiting to pop her on?
We've got a different Christina joining us. We need Christine Williams.
Sorry, I forgot the last name because I feel like we're just best friends now.
So we're just got to get Stacy to let Christine join us. Stand by.
Okay. Ginevra, in the meantime, we had a question. Do you know anything about when baking became a leisure activity as opposed to a professional one?
Yeah, I saw that question, and I wish I had an answer. I don't. I would direct anyone who's curious about more of the history of cooking and just sort of it as an art and a leisure activity to Boston University's School of Gastronomy. It was founded by Julia Child and Jacques Pepin. They have some really fabulous resources. It's just like kind of an undiscovered gem in my opinion.
That's amazing. Thank you for telling us about that. There's also a comment here from Jonathan DeMarco, a question, not baking related, but what is behind Miss Zappella? This amazing thing? I'm glad you asked about it because that is actually a print by one of our amazing preparators at the museum, Annalise Grachovich, who is also one of Austin's best printmakers, the best little printmaker in Texas. And you can go to her website and see those and check out Ovitch.com. And I love her work. And Ginevra, you have one of her pieces too, right?
I do, yeah. I have, so you have behind you one of her gorgeous large-scale woodcuts, and I have one of her collage pieces made out of various intaglio printmaking techniques. She's just super beyond talented.
Okay.
So we're just waiting on Christine to be admitted. I think we may be experiencing some technical difficulties. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
We had some amazing, I mean, this because of, we're having some technical difficulties, but Lorraine Lasden, who's one of our great docents, told us that Teresita Fernandez loves to blend disparate materials, which, you know, like different kinds of materials. So she would have loved that cake with the married couple with all those different elements in it. I think she's right. What do you think, Jennifer? We get to walk through that every single morning.
Yeah, I mean, I just relate so profoundly to what all of these bakers have said. It's such an immersive experience. It really is like stepping into a pool and just being transported.
The first time I visited the Blanton, I had no idea that was there, and I walked in and I was like, I am living my best mermaid life. I love this piece. It's amazing. It's so beautiful, and it's beautiful as a whole. But then when you get up close to the walls, like and see the actual tiles, they're really interesting as pieces of art individually.
So we're getting people asking to show us the cake.
I know, I want to show you the cookie.
And we do have images of the other entries, but they're our showrunner Stacy has those queued up. So I think that we're just experiencing a little bit of some technical difficulties. But if you do want to go see some of the other entries, you can go on Instagram and enter the hashtag Blanton Bake-Off, and you'll be able to see them pop up. There's some very, very cool. I wish they could have all won because they were all really interesting, and people chose some unexpected works to replicate. Which was
Carlotta, can I jump on really quickly, because I'm realizing I can share my screen, and while we seem to have had a issue with getting Christine on, unfortunately, because she has like the coolest things to tell us, we can at least show her cookie.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna blow your mind. So let us show this. You are not going to believe this. I'm sharing my screen right now. I hope you can see it. Can y'all see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the cookie is the one on the right. The piece of art is the one on the left. Not that you'd be able to know that. So what we've got here is Christine recreated a beautiful piece of art that is in the Blanton's European art collection. It is an icon by Simone da Bologna. It dates to the 1300s. And I'm sorry I have to speak for her, but I am very glad that I talked to her many times about this. What Christine told me was that this is her favorite work in the collection, and that she grew up in Western Pennsylvania as a little kid, and she grew up Catholic and was surrounded by these kinds of things, these kinds of religious images of the Madonna and Child. And although she doesn't have them around her now, they still give her a real sense of nostalgia and peace and happiness. So she gravitates toward them. And she actually only started baking 4 years ago, baking these kinds of cookies only 4 years ago. So it's 2020. If you start right now, by 2024, you can not only become a master cookie decorator, you can win the Blanton Bake-Off year 5, which we'll have an even bigger competition for, right? And this is made from a brownie cookie dough that she hand sculpted. This whole thing, it's one cookie. She did it totally by hand, chilled it, baked it. It came out, sprayed the whole thing, and then get this. She hand painted this entire cookie with food gels that she diluted with alcohol, took a paintbrush and painted the whole thing. This is hand painted. It is a work of art. So I think I, as an art historian, thinks that it completely captures the spirit and the intensity and the religious devotional, the sense of religious devotion. I feel like you could probably pray to this and it might work.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I'm not hearing from anyone regarding, oh, did you just, is that you, Christy?
I don't know, what did I do?
Or is that, that might be Stacy sharing her screen.
Oh, I think this is me. Sorry. Oh, well, I mean, I guess as long as we're here, we can look at some of the other images we've got.
So, right, yeah, so there were the macarons that were up there at the top that were based on, again, there were a couple that were based on stacked waters. So those look absolutely delicious.
Those look delicious. I have to say, I'm just scrolling down now. I want to show y'all this one. I think this is brilliant. This toast situation, the baker made the bread, which is, I think, the hardest thing to do in baking, because I can make a cupcake, but I can't make a loaf of bread for anything. And then toasted them. That's my dog. And then toasted them to the different colors of this work. So Byron Kim is an amazing artist. I've seen him work up close and personal, and he does sort of group portraits of where people are represented by the exact identical color of their skin. And when he works, you've got to see him. It's extraordinarily meticulous. He's sitting there looking, mixing paint, looking, mixing paint. And when I was working at a museum in the past, he came and he did a group portrait of that museum by people's skin. And when he would put the paint on their skin, you couldn't even see it. You could not tell where the paint was. So I love this toast.
Right. And then what are some of the other ones? And we have a question from Kim in the audience who's wondering, do you happen to know, Chrissy, about the size of that cookie, the winning cookie? It seemed like it was pretty large.
Yeah, so unfortunately we had a video that Christine made of her making it, and she's spraying it. It seems about like hand sized. So, oh, here we go. We can actually watch it. Let's go ahead and do that. So Christine started by baking the cookie, and then when it came out of the oven, she spray painted the whole thing with this gold. And what is really interesting to me is that she's working much in the way that the artists of the time worked, right? So building up from light to dark, you start by laying down your lightest paints and then working upwards, doing those dark colors on the outlines. This is incredible. She might as well be, this could not be a cookie. This could be an actual painting. It's extraordinary. So Christine, by the way, is our professional baker. Her bakery based here in Austin is called Cookies del Mundo. And she started baking cookies because she moved to Mexico with her husband, and she didn't have a work visa, so she had a lot of free time, and she split it between volunteering in an orphanage and making highly decorated cookies. And here we are.
Do we happen to know, I'm assuming that as a baker, she makes everything with edible ingredients, and so I'm assuming that cookie, it's completely edible.
That cookie is edible. And I asked her what she was going to do with it. And she said what I would have said, which was like, I don't know. I guess I have to save it. So I wonder what all the bakers in our challenge did with their cookies afterwards.
I can say for myself, I tried to participate and have already taken a slice out of my cake. But this was my attempt. And I have to say, I'm just so in awe of all of the bakers who participated, because I'm not going to keep showing this, but the Brock print that I tried to emulate, I got freeze-dried blueberries and made cream cheese frosting for a nice paper white background, and spent so long on this parchment paper stencil. And I will warn all of you for next year, don't put down a stencil on room temperature frosting. It will remove half of the frosting when you lift it off, but it does still taste delicious. So,
lesson learned. And
I'm going to be passing your house on the way home, Ginevra. I will park my car and idle while you run down and bring me a piece of the cake, please.
I'll give you a social distanced slice, don't worry.
And Ginevra kind of tipped our hat a little bit there. We have been talking about, just because there was such a nice response to this event, that we've been talking about possibly making it an annual event. So, so y'all stay tuned, because that may just happen. So I think, unfortunately, since we're not able to get the Christine on here, I think we'll just go ahead and wrap it up. I don't. Let's see. There's one more question here. Will the museum do any more of these? Well, I think we will. We're definitely planning on doing more pop-up exhibitions for the curated conversation, where we take a theme and explore that theme in our print collection, for the most part, prints and drawings. As far as doing another baking type thing, I think we're looking at maybe doing making this Blanton Bake-Off an annual event, as I noted. So I think that's it for tonight's conversation. We want to thank all the bakers who joined us, all the people who submitted their entries. It was really wonderful and a great community response. And just a couple notes about what's coming up next. Our next curated conversation next Tuesday, May 26th at 5 p.m. will be God's Behaving Badly, a curator Q&A featuring a live Q&A with Dr. Kelly Wood, who's joining us from the University of Tennessee, and our own lovely and talented Christy Zappella.
Oh, thank you, Carla. And please come back next week because it's going to be scandalous. It is the Renaissance Sex and Games edition.
Woo! How could you resist? And then if you'd like to watch curated conversations from the past, I think we've done about 5 of them now, 5 or 6. You can also go to blantonmuseum.org/museum from home, and you can also take virtual 360 tours like the Ed Ruscha, a tour of the Ed Ruscha exhibition that features the drum skins that we saw tonight, and you can explore other content. If you'd like to show your support, you can become a member and go to blantonmuseum.org/membership. If you want to find out about events like this and you're not already a member or on our newsletter, you can just subscribe to blantonmuseum.org/subscribe. And we send about 2 to 3 emails a week. I mean, not a week, that would be awful, a month. We won't spam you. And then if you have any ideas for future events, future topics for these curated conversations that you'd like to share with us, you can just write to media@blantonmuseum.org. So thanks again. We greatly appreciate your coming, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.